Hello, Nate.
Hello, Greg. Hello, everybody out there on the internet. For the first time in what feels like a month and a half, everything is working properly the way that it is supposed to be working when it is supposed to be working. So I'm going to take that as a good sign
I agree.
for promising program and good fall, not spring. I'm not in the southern hemisphere. It's fall here in the ABA area. Hello to everybody. We are excited to be here for another another episode, I guess, of What's This Bird Live. I'm Nate Swick. That's Greg Neise. We're both from the American Birding Association. We're excited to talk birds and birding with you here today. Hey, to everybody chiming in on the internets. Yes, Eric Yanyo. YouTube decided to cooperate this week. Thank
Yeah,
goodness. Thank goodness. We did some work back channel after last time.
we did. We were checking out the back end of things, making sure that
Yeah.
everything was
Plugging
up to
stuff in.
snuff.
You know how it is.
Yeah, tightening the screws and
That's right.
putting more band-aids on it. Um,
Exactly.
hi,
Just
Gavin
sometimes.
and Davina on Facebook. Um,
Hello, Angela Jarrett, Sir, R.I. Davio, Eric Agno, Marsha Balestri, all the folks over on YouTube. Andrew Cambauer, greetings from DC. Greetings from the internet. We're here to talk
yeah.
birds and birding on What's This Bird Live. What's the story with What's This Bird Live? You might be asking. Well, let me tell you.
Well, why
The
don't you tell us
ABA,
about that, Nate?
I'll do this. I'll do this thing. I'll do this spiel. Um, you totally took me off my path. The ABA hosts a number of groups on Facebook, one of which is What's This Bird, which is a friendly community for identifying mystery birds wherever you might be in the ABA area and around the world. Sometimes we get some photos that we would like to discuss with a little more depth, and that's why Greg and I come to you every other week to talk about birds and birding and bird identification. Maybe give you some clues, some tips to take with you when you go off on your own birding excursions this weekend. It's a beautiful day down here in the Southeast, Greg. How's things up in
It
Chicago?
is. Well, and I was going to say we've got a little bit of a theme today. So the theme today is
Themes.
ratty summer sparrows and
Oh my
disheveled
goodness.
fall warblers.
That's like
Um,
our theme for like 2 months.
yeah. Um,
But that's what you see out there. That's what's out there right now.
yes, and for those of you watching, we are watching the comments on Facebook and YouTube. So if you've got something to say, you just want to say hi, or you have a question, or whatever, pop it in the comments. We're watching, and we will get to it if we can. We usually do.
Absolutely. We love some
Um,
tangents here on What's This Bird Live. We're excited to go down the rabbit hole if you need to. Sarah
yeah,
Coffee says warblers are venturing south, starting to get birdie in Wisconsin.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I talked with my friend Jody Allaire with Birds Canada yesterday to record a segment for the American Birding Podcast next week. He is in Drumheller, Alberta, and he was saying that things are absolutely gearing up for fall migration where he is. So those of us to the south will probably see things really start moving.
Well,
Once the calendar turns to September. I mean, things have been moving for like a month now,
we've
but
got vanguard
the
of
peak is
things
on
like
its way.
Tennessee warbler and Blackburnian and stuff like that in central Illinois
Good
already.
stuff.
Morning warbler.
Yeah, we
You
had
know,
a golden winged warbler in my county. The reported yesterday, which is it's a southern Appalachian breeding bird, but here in the lower country, that is a
yeah.
thing we typically don't. I mean, it's clearly a migrant. It's a bird that's not here during the summer, so things are definitely moving.
And you asked about the weather. As we were talking just before we went
It's
live,
fabulous. It's fabulous across the
it's
entire
been
eastern
absolutely
United
fabulous.
States.
You know, as everybody knows, the DNC was here this week, and it's really been something to see all these people who have never been to Chicago in the summer be like, "Oh my God, this place is fantastic!" And
Even
it's
down here
been
where I live,
it's just been perfect. It's just been perfect.
even down here where I live in the southeast, we had a nice I don't know whether it was a cold front or something came in and blew the humidity away, and it is just absolutely fantastic outside. I've been sitting on my screen porch as much as I can and just
Yeah,
enjoying
but
the weather. It's really pleasant.
we are days away from the fall migration really cranking up and hawk watching starting and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, Sarah Coffee, a really snarled feathered vireo felt bad. you know it's going to get better. Well, that's something we're going to talk about today.
Yeah,
This is the time of year, you know, migration is heating up, breeding is over. This is molt season for a lot of birds, as we've
it
said many
is.
times. Birds go through a number of different, very energy intensive a cycle throughout their year, and they don't like to do any one or two of they don't like to do any two of those things at the same time because that's just too much for their bodies to bear.
Yeah.
So there's our breeding, migration, and molt, the replacement of the body feathers, frequently the this time of year, frequently the flight feathers as well. So birds are looking really ratty right now, and it will get better. They'll get better in the next couple weeks, and then they'll start moving as soon as that's over.
I don't know.
So,
I
yeah.
like the challenge. I mean, it birds that are in that state of feather wear, you have to sort of imagine and sort of look through the mess
Yeah,
and
that's
imagine
exactly right.
what's in there. And we've got a
Beneath
couple of
it.
those that
Yeah.
we'll be talking about. So,
Got a question. Got a question on YouTube for you, Greg.
yeah.
Sir says going to be in Chicago for the first time next week. Any suggestions on where to go birding? Where would you
Oh,
go
of,
birding in
of
Chicago
course,
right now?
hit Montrose.
Montrose. Yeah, that's the place.
Montrose
That's the
Point.
place.
I mean, in the Chicago metro area, Montrose Point is, for someone who's visiting, is by far the best place. It's like our version of Cape May. You know, it's just phenomenal, and
It's pretty good year round, isn't it? I mean, you would
it
go there
is.
no matter what.
It is. But
Yeah.
right now, it's really popping. There's warblers all over the place, and the beach is full of shorebirds and gulls and terns, and it's really good. But really, any of the city parks are going to be good.
Yeah,
From
anything
now
along the
until
lakefront, probably.
from now until it freezes, it's going to be great.
Yeah, and even when it freezes, you get different stuff, although it's further out.
Yeah, yeah.
Susan Nelson says her cardinals look like they've been out at the bar all night and forgot to comb their feathers. That's exactly right. That's what birds look like right now in the middle of Holt.
I have no
So
idea
we'll be
what
talking
that
about
looks
that.
like.
No, it's
No,
been a
I
while
have
for
no
me. I
clue
can't
what
handle
it's
that
like to
anymore.
be like that.
Yeah. Montrose, says Gavin Alvine.
Yes, yes.
Or on Facebook. Everyone says Montrose. Montrose is the place to go. I had the good fortune to go to Montrose for the first time this past spring when we did our American Birding Association board and staff. Well, no, not board, just staff retreat where we all got together. We're spread out across the country.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get together. And we went birding one morning at Montrose, and it is as advertised. Let me tell you, it is great.
Yeah.
Great morning birding on a nice little postage stamp size.
And really,
part
if
of
you
property, but-
dig into the history, we're not going to go into it here, but if you dig into the history of that place, and you know, I was a kid birder there in the '70s, and it was nothing like it is today. And the stewards and the
worse,
city
same,
and the park
different?
district
Yeah.
have done it's a testament to what you can do with a park. It's because it's not big at all for migrating
it
birds.
feels very geared towards birding, towards birders.
It is. It
with
is.
the extensive trail network and all the stuff there. Like they've clearly got birders in mind with a lot of that, and that's great to see.
But yeah, I mean, to give you an idea, a professional baseball player could throw a baseball across it. I mean, it's not that big.
Maybe not a
Okay.
cub, but
Yeah, what else we got here? We got Suzanne Wagner says coastal Rhode Island is popping with many warbler species.
coast is where to go. Coast is where
okay,
to
I'm
be,
not gonna
especially
talk
those
too
birds
much
are moving
about-
south. They hit the coast. They can't go out over the ocean. They pile up there.
Yeah,
It's just like in spring when they're all going north. You know, the south side of the Great Lakes, the north side of the Gulf of Mexico. Anytime you've got a water barrier, birds are going to get stacked up there. It's always a good place to go this time of year, especially after a nice windy evening.
yeah. I'm not gonna pine too much longer on old Montrose, but Gavin Alvin asked, what did it look like back then? Well, it was basically just a big mowed grass hill with a honeysuckle hedge and a lot of construction rubble, and that was it. So it was just nothing. But it was still full of birds because of where it's situated. Paul Shaw says scarlet tanagers are in the same state of molt hangover in West Virginia.
they're
Yeah,
cardinales. They're related to cardinals. Makes sense.
exactly.
Never seen a bald scarlet tanager though. I would like to.
No.
That'd be nice. I'm
No.
sure they're like that for a brief period. Nicholas Bile asks, "I'll be birding Lake Michigan for the first time midway up the Michigan side next
Oh,
week.
yeah.
Any tips for gulls and terns?"
Tiscornia Park.
water.
I'm not depending on how far up
Yeah,
you go,
there you
but
go.
Tiscornia Park is really good. You can go out on that long pier. I've seen. Well, there was an ancient murrelet there once, and while we were looking for that, we had two species. We had Pomeran and parasitic Jaegers, little gulls. It was really phenomenal.
Stuff. All the Great Lakes are good. Greg's Great Lakes
Yeah.
guy.
Hey,
I don't know much about the
been
Great Lakes.
bumming around here for quite a while.
Yeah. All right. Should we?
Let's dig into.
Greg?
We got some things to talk about.
Oh wait, we got. I always forget. I say let's go to the birds, and then we forget that
we're going to the birds. We're going to the birds, but we're going to go to Seattle first.
Sorry,
the weekend of exactly the weekend of August 31st to September 1st. Join us in Seattle for a ABA Community Weekend. These are free. They're all weekend long with bird walks and workshops and programs, and all of it's free. All you have to do is sign up, but you do have to sign up. Go to aba.org. It's right there, front and center. And in addition to that, there is gear you can check out from OM System, and I believe Vortex as well. And speaking of that, if you're an ABA member and you log into your account up at the top of our website where it says My Account, you will notice a page that is ABA deals and what's the word I'm looking for?
Partnerships.
Partnerships. Anyways, Zeiss and OM System are both offering really good deals for ABA members. And if you're looking for some new optic gear or camera gear, you should pop in there and take a look.
These sort of deals that would pay for your ABA membership if you wanted to take advantage of them.
They're being quite generous. So yeah, it's
thanks to Zeiss and OM System. They've always been great partners for us.
They really have. So let's go out to the Great Plains.
The Great Plains in Cimarron, Oklahoma. I believe that's in western Oklahoma, if I remember right.
That seems right.
Yeah, we got a raptor here.
Yep.
We got what appears to be a Buteo. We like to break our hawks into groups based on their genus, which is easy to do now. Might be more difficult if they ever break up the accipiters, as they're threatening to do for years.
Now, do you say Buteo or Buteo?
I say Buteo. I've heard Buteo though. I know you can go either way, but this is one of those Butean hawks, in that it has longer wings. Shorter tail. These are soaring hawks, primarily open country birds, not forest birds like accipiters, of which there are many options in the Great Plains. Great Plains rich in large soaring raptors for sure.
But are there really
options for soaring raptors in Oklahoma? I'd say I can think of at least, depending on the time of year, 5, 6.
I mean, in August, yeah.
In August, maybe fewer. But
in August, maybe
you could see maybe golden eagle in August.
Yeah.
Late golden eagle. I would consider that one of the big soaring hawks.
Or early.
Red-tailed. Rough leg is probably a bit early for that, though they could be some down early. Ferruginous is probably rare, but a possibility.
I think Ferruginous is I think Ferruginous is probably a possibility.
Yeah, I usually think of them further west, but I mean, Oklahoma's getting out there.
So yeah, let's look at some of those Buteos. Let's look at some. Well, what I'm noticing on this bird.
Yeah, let's talk about what we see on this bird too, and that is, all Buteos have longer wings, especially compared to that tail. But those long, very pointed wings are sort of a strong field mark for this species. Also, it's kind of a slender build.
I was going to say it's a very slim bird.
Yeah, when I think of the classic, open country Buteo, which is red-tailed hawk, which is common, across the continent. That's a very bulky bird, very shouldery bird with a big head, big bill, big body. This bird doesn't really show any of that. And big shouldery bird, that would describe ferruginous as well. Also a very bulky hawk. Rough-legged less so, but that's a rarer bird. But yeah, all quite dark, long wings, slender body, things to think about.
Yeah, so let's look at those three in particular, because I think those three are really what we're dealing with here, and identify this bird. It is a Swainson's hawk with those long wings, and you can see the red-tailed hawk in the middle. How the wings really only come halfway down. Now, that bird, the primaries are a little bit ratty, but still, the primary tips do not reach the end of the tail the way they do with Swainson's hawk. However, ferruginous hawk has long wings like a Swainson's hawk, but that's when with raptors you got to pay attention to structure, and Swainson's hawk is a long distance migrant that feeds on insects a lot, and it feeds on small game, but it feeds on insects a lot. It has to migrate south to where there's insects,
locusts, dragonflies, things of that nature,
cicadas. Yeah. Ferruginous hawk is, I believe, our biggest buteo.
I believe you're correct, Greg.
And look at
I
the
always
gape.
think of them as just structurally, there's a big bird.
They're
I don't know
massive.
that they're that much bigger than like a large red tail, but they feel bigger.
They do, and they're just bulky, chesty. But look at the gape.
Big bill.
How the mouth line goes all the way almost to the back of the eye.
Yeah.
And how on the other two birds it barely reaches the front, or that's because these ferruginous hawks, they just down prairie dogs whole. They have huge mouths, and they chuck them down like
big. Yeah.
they just cough them down like owls coughing down voles. So yeah, out in the Great Plains, if you've got a long-winged raptor, it's this time of year, it's probably going to be a Swainson's hawk.
Probably going to be Swainson's.
But you can't rule out ferruginous. I'm sorry, you can't identify it completely by those long wings because ferruginous hawk is very variable. This one's kind of right in the middle, but it can be very dark. It can be very pale.
They're
and Swainson's hawk as well is quite
variable. I think not that I have a ton of experience with ferruginous hawk. I've not been in their range all that much, but I've seen a ton of red-tailed hawks and I've seen a lot of Swainson's hawks, and like you really can't tell the difference between these birds, even when you're driving by on a highway, I-70 at 80 miles an hour. Like they have a different shape. Like Swainson's hawk's very slim, slender little waist once you get down to the bottom part of the bird. And red-tailed hawk's kind of bigger and bulkier. And you may not be able to peg it as a Swainson's hawk. Peg it as a Swainson's hawk when you were driving by that fast, but you peg it as something different, not a red-tailed hawk. And it would, you see enough of them, you sort of know. Sarah Coffee asks, Swainson's hawk is bigger than a red-shouldered hawk. That's a good question. They're shaped quite differently. I think Swainson's hawk has a much larger wings, but I think the body just in general is probably even going to be a little more slender than a red-shouldered hawk, which is a pretty stocky hawk. But you don't usually see them in the same places for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, red-shouldered hawk is it's a forest bird. It's not an open country bird the way that Swainson's red-tailed and ferruginous are. Although, they do certainly migrate together, and
I've seen them in the same sort of places, like at Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge in eastern North Carolina, where we get vagrant Swainson's hawks almost every year. Like the big open country areas are like right next to on the other side of the road from like dense swamp, and so you'll get like these two birds kind of sometimes the shoulders will fly out into the open area and whirl around with the other raptors, and you can see them together. But for the most part, you don't usually see them. Chris Ortega says, yes, Swainson's is definitely bigger than red-shouldered. I don't have my bird book. I could go over and get it.
Well,
but I wouldn't be shocked if like the mass was different. Yeah, like the weight of a Swainson's hawk is probably lighter than a shoulder, but they still feel like a bigger bird because the wings are broader and longer.
Okay, red-shouldered is 17 by 40 and 1.25 pounds. So 17 is the body length with tail, and 40 is the wingspan, pound and a quarter. And Swainson's hawk is 19, 51, much longer legs or longer wings, and it's heavier. Almost 2 pounds.
Oh, get out. There you
almost 2 pounds, so it's a bigger bird.
Go figure. There you go. Thank you for that.
It's a bigger, but it's slimmer. And I mean, definitely when migrating, the Swainson's hawk is going to be pretty much the longest winged buteo. I mean, it's almost approaching a harrier.
It's a very distinctive profile when you see him soaring. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Lori Conright says they have a more upright posture, either easier to tell from a red-tailed hawk just by that. Usually, I would agree with that as well.
Well, and you can kind of see that here. I mean, the red-tailed hawk looks kind of hunched. The Swainson's hawk
the shoulders. It's the shoulders. They kind of
it's got those.
They get up there, kind of burly.
Yeah.
Swainson's usually always dark-chested? Christy Esmahan asks.
No.
The older birds, well, they're the dark face. They're
Well,
dark face whitesies too.
young birds are
Young birds are
very
not. Yeah,
pale underneath with just little streaking and kind of dark mustache.
yeah. Where I live in the east, when we get the vagrant birds, it's usually the younger birds. Yeah, most vagrant
Yeah,
birds are younger birds anyway.
yeah. Okay, now we're going to Ocala,
Not a
Florida,
hawk.
and
Not a hawk.
here is our first warbler. Um, so when I saw this picture, I knew immediately what it was.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
And
This is one that I look for.
it's one that I look for, and it's one when I was doing big days. It's a bird that we would stake out, and
Oh yeah.
spend a lot of time.
This is a good one for a big day. Yeah.
Spend a lot of time figuring out where they are and seeing them from just this angle, and
Yep.
there is something about the shape of this warbler,
Yes.
with its short tail, and it's the bill is a little bit broader. It just kind of has a unique shape, but it's really
Kind of
really
like to hold
subtle.
they hold their wings just a little bit out from the body too. So you get
They
that kind of
do, like
distinctive
it's doing
shape
right
in
here.
the back end. Exactly. Oh yeah.
Like it's doing right here. And so the two species in play are Blackburnian and cerulean. And the reason I put this one up here was not really to compare the two, but the person who photographed this bird included 3 pictures of it. And this picture might be a little bit confusing, but then one of the other pictures that they included
Yeah.
absolutely nails it.
Yeah.
And
the spread tail. Yeah.
the spread tail. And that is something to really pay attention to with fall warblers, is the tail pattern. And if you can, if they're bouncing around and flicking their tail and stuff like that, or if you get a picture like this, this bird would be identifiable just by the tail. If you cut off the rest of the bird and just showed the spread tail, it would be identifiable. And Sibley does a really good job of illustrating all the warbler tails, closed and open.
It's that distinctive shape for me, though. I mean, that's the thing that stands out. Like we talked about it already, but just I want to reiterate it because that short tail, chunky body, long wings is such a unique profile for a lot of our warblers. And Blackburnian warbler, also a long distance migrant. I mean, that's one that goes all the way down into northern South America. They go a long way.
They do.
Alongside cerulean warblers. The cerulean warblers are in northern South America as well. But they never have that. The tail is never that short. And they also like to kind of hold their wings a little bit closer to the body too.
Yep. And the bill's a little bit different shape.
Bill's
and
a little bit
put
different.
that all
There's
together.
A little more color in the throat, although these ceruleans can be a little bit yellowish sometimes and can be confusing. But usually there's a little bit more apricot kind of color on a Blackburnian warbler, even a really pale female. But yeah, the short tail, long wings. I mean, that's what you're looking for when you're looking up in the trees.
You
and
put all those things together, and it's our favorite word.
Oh, it's jizz. It's gestalt.
It's the gestalt.
It's vibe. It's all.
It's the gestalt. It's vibe. All right, we got to say vibe now. Vibe. Exactly. The vibe of a cerulean warbler is just, when you get familiar with them, it's just immediately different from a Blackburnian, in a way that's like we've been doing here. It's, if you have to describe it, it takes a little while, but when you see it, you know it. And
you know it. Yeah, and if this is as I'll mention again, the warbler angle, as people are saying here, that kind of upward at about 60 degrees. Where you kind of get a hint of the back and the head, but not enough to really be absolutely certain. If you did see that, you'd see that the cerulean warbler, especially the female warblers, have this very unique kind of gray green color, gray blue. It's weird. It's different than all the other warblers, and that stands out too. But you don't usually see them at that angle unless you're extremely fortunate.
Yeah. All right. So
Greg,
that's
I'm told we're passing the vibe check along with the cerulean warbler.
Thank you.
We do our best.
We try. Okay, this one. Yeah.
So we talk
summer
about these
sparrows, man.
Ratty summer sparrows, and they can be very tough because, a lot of times we rely on the I don't know, the state of the streaking, the width of the streaking, the way the streaking looks on a bird, thick, thin, well defined, poorly defined, that sort of stuff. And when you've got a bird that's as ratty as this one, all that stuff gets thrown out the window. And so you've got to use those other sort of field marks, the gestalt we're talking about, the feel of the bird, and habitat is always a useful thing
And
with sparrows too. Not always, but generally speaking.
yeah, and like I said, you kind of have to look through the
Yeah.
rattiness and stuff to sort of see what's there.
Mhm.
And as Nate said, pay attention to structure. And two or three things that stand out with this bird. The face seems very plain, like almost field sparrow plain.
Yeah, weirdly plain. That's what threw me off when I first looked at these photos.
And it's got a little bit of an eye ring and kind of a pinkish bill.
Little pink, little bill, short bill.
And
for a sparrow,
but that would be a really really good bird in California. They
the field sparrow,
especially
yeah,
this time of year.
quite rare. Yeah,
And then some of the other birds that look like this, like American tree sparrow, that would be even crazier this time of year, or if at all. I mean, that's also a really good bird in California. So we start looking at the birds that we would find in Fort Bragg, California in August. And then looking at the structure of this bird, I think it was Alvaro, our friend Alvaro Jaramillo, who pointed out how short the primaries are, and we can see that in the second image. Again,
those are barely
again
reaching the base
with
of the tail.
confusing birds, if you have more than one picture, one angle, I mean, even just this difference, the bird pitched up a little bit, gives us two good views to figure out what this bird is.
Yeah, some things that don't stand out for a field sparrow for me, and I realize these are kind of odd field marks. Field sparrow just looks like it has a massive eye on its face, just a really cute face, largely because the eye is so big.
Yep.
And this one doesn't have that. This is a relatively small eye on this bill, stubby wings.
Well, the stubby
not a lot of
wings,
streaking,
it's
but
like
it does have some streaking on the chest. You can see it in the second photo.
yeah, it's blown out a little bit, but you can see that streaking there. It's got those bubblegum pink legs, pink, smallish pink bill, and I'm looking at the face pattern. It's got a distinct supercilium, an eye line lying over the eye.
See it coming out behind the eyes.
And the malar, which is that stripe off the mouth going down the side of the chin, those two are basically the same color and tone. So we have sort of a brownish, kind of mangled cheek auricular. This bird is its plumage is definitely worn, but we can see that pattern of the auricular, or I'm sorry, the mustache stripe and the eyebrow are sort of the same color and tone. And that's usually indicative of one species. But Alvaro also pointed out that the long tertials and short primaries, like the tertials almost completely overlap the entire length of the primaries. You don't really see the primaries at all. That's
tertials
also
are those longer feathers that cover the flight feathers when the bird has the folded wing. So
yes.
You think that you're seeing maybe the primaries and secondaries. You're not. Those are actually covered up by the tertials. The tertials kind of protect them when the bird is sitting, especially for these kind of scrub loving birds like sparrows that spend a lot of time digging through scratchy thorns and whatnot. You don't want to mess up your flight feathers. That's why you have your tertials there to do it.
So let's take a look. Let's identify this bird and take a look at what the choices are and what the differences are in California in August. And so the bird in question at the left there, really, if you look at these four birds, it really only kind of lines up with one of these. And again, look at the way the tertials, like you don't see any primaries. The tail isn't all that long. If we go back, I think we can see the tail. It doesn't have that super long tail of a brewer's sparrow,
or song sparrow. Any of the spazellas that have, or the melospizas that have the long tail.
Yeah, but you see the Savannah sparrow there at the top right, how the supercilium and the malar are basically the same color and tone,
Mm-hmm.
and they frame that brownish auricular, that cheek patch. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that this bird, our mystery bird, is a savanna sparrow,
Yeah, you can see
and
those long tertials too on that comp photo too. Those are those longer kind of
exactly,
feathers that have the dark center and the light borders. Those are the tertials, and see how they're kind of covering up the and protecting the flight feathers when on the bird when the wing is folded.
exactly, and brewers and chipping for that matter, but chipping would have dark lores, so we can get
Mm-hmm.
rid of chipping. But brewers has a much plainer face, usually a bolder
Yeah,
eye ring. But again, in August,
different
look at
shape.
how ratty that brewers
Yeah.
looks. They can be really scraggly, but notice how there's really no definition to the face.
Mm-hmm.
And the mystery bird, which is a savanna sparrow, definitely it's worn, but
There's some
there's
stuff
some
going on.
definition to that face pattern. Vesper
Savannah sparrow
sparrow,
is Savannah sparrow is always a good shout for these sort of mystery birds that you can't quite place otherwise
it
because
is.
it is a very unique sparrow. It's the only member of its genus, so it's kind of got that unique body type, the longer body, shorter tail, kind of smaller head.
It can
That
even look
stands
like
out even
longspurs
among those.
sometimes.
You can. You're exactly right. Yep.
But then working down the list here, Vesper sparrow. Well, if we could see, if we could see the tail well, we would see the white outer tail feathers of a Vesper sparrow.
Mhm.
But the face on the Vesper sparrow, again, very plain. The It really doesn't have a supercilium. It's got a well-defined malar, but the face just kind of blends up into the crown without any real eyebrow stripe, and it does that in pretty much every plumage. But it's also got a bigger bill. Of all the birds that we're looking at, Vesper has the biggest bill, and Song Sparrow just included it in here because it's dark. I'm sorry, it's
Always
common.
worth throwing in there for
It's
every sparrow
common,
comparison.
and
Song sparrow, a good default sparrow.
exactly. It's the default. But it's usually a darker bird. Although Savannah Sparrow, just like Song Sparrow, is found across the ABA area from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and it is extremely variable. Can be very pale or very dark.
Very dark on
And
the West Coast, frequently.
exactly, and well in Florida, man, I was surprised to see how dark the North Florida birds are. They're really
Some of the
approaching
ones
Song
that,
Sparrow.
oh, so yeah. Lisa Maroon notes in YouTube. If you look at the thin line that goes straight back from the eye, there's a small dark spot on the savannah, which is also distinct. That's sort of what Greg was talking about on the sort of frame of the auricular that we see on the savannah sparrow. You can only see parts of it
Yeah.
on this bird, our mystery bird, because it is so ratty and worn. But you can see enough. Good call. That is definitely
Yes,
there.
but Vesper Sparrow, when it's not in really horrible plumage, can
Would have
show
a little
that
bit
too,
of
and has a very similar, even more defined pattern like that.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have the eyebrow stripe
Malar is
above
not
it.
yeah.
It just kind of blends through.
Mhm.
And then the Song Sparrow, you'll notice the malar is pale, but the eyebrow is gray, and
Yeah.
it can vary from being buff and very ashy gray to just being kind of dark. But there's always a difference between the malar and the supercilium. And Savannah, when they're the same color and tone,
Mhm.
probably looking at a Savannah sparrow.
Good call. Savannah sparrow. Good
So
bird
yeah,
there.
and that's
In the dunes in the coastal scrub.
when I saw this one, I loved it. I was just like,
I see a lot
okay,
of these, and these get a lot of because it posted to my state
for a new birder,
group.
something like
frequently.
this is just mind-boggling.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't really look like anything in the field guide, and part of that is because
Yeah.
of the
It
part of the way
looks like
because
a
of the
friggin'
way
dinosaur.
it's
Yeah.
presenting itself here, um, clambering around like some kind of a chickadee or something.
Yeah,
Going
for
after.
sure.
I'm not sure what kind of fruit that is.
Some sort of fruit. Yeah, I don't know what tree that is. Albertson, New York. Um, so we've got a bird here with some big old strong feet. We've got a bird here with very distinctive pattern on the back, black and white
And the
pattern on the
tail.
flight feathers and the tail as well, all over gray. Um, yeah, kind of pointy tail feathers you can see on the far
Yeah.
right of that bird.
But
Some
that
things to
that
see about
little
this is
that little thrush like bill is really confusing.
what's going on with that bill, because it looks like a woodpecker, but that bill doesn't look like a woodpecker's bill. Interesting thing about newly fledged birds is that that part takes a little while to grow, and it can really throw you off if you're not familiar with it.
Yes, and in the late summer and early fall, when things are fruiting like this, uh, you will see woodpeckers climbing around in the branches and the vines, eating fruit and looking like chickadees or titmice. And
Yeah,
this is a very young, recently fledged
yeah, couldn't be more
red-bellied woodpecker. So I mean, if you just
dogwood.
look
I
at the
thought that
back
looked
of the
like a
bird,
dogwood. Thank you. Birding AP Benson notes that that's the fruit of the dogwood. I thought that those looked like
dogwood.
dogwood leaves. Forgot that they fruit like that.
Um,
But yeah,
I mean, if you just look at the back and the tail, it's pretty easy. But when you see this bird climbing around in the little branches like this, I've seen pileated woodpeckers climbing around in grapevines doing this, and
yeah,
they just
as
like
have I.
it's
It's
really wild to
disconcerting.
see them do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
so the thing about these young red-bellied woodpeckers, perhaps more than a lot of other woodpeckers, maybe this is the case with some of the other Melanurpes, but this is the only. But they look so weird when they're first fledged. Like the neck looks super long, and
the bills are
the
short.
bill is just small, and the head looks extremely small. We have a mention of a velociraptor. Yeah, they do kind of look like a
A little bit,
velociraptor.
yeah.
It's weird looking bird. But everything else, checks out as red-bellied woodpecker. The zebra stripe back, the markings on the tail, and the overall gray. Even though the gray
Yep.
of an adult bird is generally a little bit more, I don't know,
And
kind
it's
of
it's
rich.
kind of hard. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at it closely, just to the right of the bird's bill, we're getting a really good look at one of those zygodactyl feet. So the zygodactyl
Mm-hmm.
means two toes facing
Two in the
forward
front and
and
two in
two
the
toes
back.
facing backwards, and we can really make that out, and we can see how strong those feet are. Big fleshy pads on the feet. So that and the pointed tail identifying this as a woodpecker.
Yeah, they're funny birds. They show up at feeders a lot of times this time of year. Back when I used to feed birds more regularly, you get the young red-bellied woodpeckers showing up, and they don't know what they're doing.
Well, you've got a new house with a new yard, so I'm
I
expecting
know. I need to
I'm
get a feeder out
expecting
there.
some good birds to be on that
We'll
yard
see.
list.
My yard list is about 12 species so far,
Well,
including
in what,
pileated
2 weeks?
woodpecker, though.
In a
Interestingly
week?
enough, yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't have any red on the head too, which the adult birds, both male and female, have
Yeah.
a little bit of red, and the juvies are all completely gray, so they can kind of throw you off a little bit. Similar to Gila in Arizona, says Greg Gilson. Yep, I imagine they look extremely similar. And
Yeah.
in fact, if we were to put a Gila woodpecker, fresh out of the nest, fresh out of the saguaro, and a red-bellied woodpecker next to each other, I think you would have a lot of trouble telling them apart. But thankfully, there are no Gila woodpeckers in Albertson, New York, I assume.
Well, never say never, but
Never say never, I guess.
can somebody say cageware? Um,
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of cage wear on this bird.
yeah.
Let's take it to Arizona.
All right. This is a nicely, boldly marked, just warbler looking bird. We can
Strongly
see
in
it's
molt.
it's in the. Looks like those are maybe some alder leaves or something of that kind.
Mulberry, maybe?
Or maybe no, it's not mulberry.
I don't know.
It's
This
one of
isn't
the.
What's this tree?
No, I know it's not what's this tree, but I blew it on the dogwood and I've just blown it on this one. Somebody will figure it out for me.
Dogwood. I feel like I should have recognized the dogwood instinctively.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of dogwood around here,
No?
unless it's
quite
planted
common
in
here.
somebody's yard. But anyway, so yeah, we've got a warbler here. We've got a warbler here. And if you just jump to the field guide, and let me see if I can pull out my trusty Sibley's here, which I think is just phenomenal. And you're flipping through these birds, and in the big guide, you get to page 491, and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking, and you're like, oh, I found it. That's a yellow-throated warbler. Look at that. It's slam dunk. I mean, done. Easy.
I mean, it looks a lot like yellow-throated warbler. The thing about yeah, but you're gonna do a butt for me. This time of year,
I would never do a butt for never.
The thing about fall warblers is that a lot of times they look like pale faded versions of the spring warblers that we're so familiar with. And so
just
you were
like with the
looking at them
sparrows we
through
were talking
that
about.
lens. Yeah, even more so, because yellow-throated warbler, incidentally, is one of the warblers that looks the same in fall as it does in spring. So yellow-throated warbler, I'm thinking less yellow-throated warbler on this one, just because it is so pale and faded. I'd expect a yellow-throated warbler to actually be still pretty bright right now.
Yeah, but you know what? They molt too, and they molt this time of year, and the thing that and you probably see more yellow-throated warblers than I do, but I've seen quite a lot of them.
They're always at the tops of the pine trees. I hear them, but I don't see them all that often, frankly.
But looking at this bird, the first thing that I notice is that my immediate first impression, like I think many people, is yellow-throated warbler, because it's got the face pattern pretty much perfect. It's got a yellow throat,
pretty yellow,
and it's got the streaking on the sides,
eyebrow streaking on the side.
Yeah, but the bill doesn't look right.
Bill looks a little small.
Yellow-throated warbler has a
massive bill,
decurved bill. It's long and slender, and it doesn't look like
flower
that.
Warbler. A lot of times they're a flower warbler.
Yeah. So what are the two species in play here, or three species in play, really, with that face pattern?
Three?
No, there's really only two.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to hit me with something.
So if you go through the book and disregard the color and just look at the pattern, there's really only two birds, and that's yellow-throated and Blackburnian.
You're correct.
So let's look at those two. And so we've got a yellow-throated in front, little bit ratty, August bird.
Sure, yeah.
But notice the different bill shape.
Yeah, bill shape is really important for a yellow-throated warbler. A lot of people don't realize that they have such a long, big bill. There's actually is it the bird with the Bahama warbler, the former subspecies?
Yeah, the Bahama warbler has
larger bill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it really does.
Like a comically long bill. But even the regular ones have quite a hefty bill, especially compared to the little one of a Blackburn.
It's got a curved culmen. It's got a curved culmen and a flat, almost recurved lower mandible that gives it this long kind of curved look that the bird on top, which is our bird in question, which is a Blackburnian warbler, doesn't have. It's more spike-like and even top and bottom. And then looking carefully at the face, you'll see there's
That's
differences.
What stands out too.
The amount of
the
black...
Blackburnian warbler has a much more extensive black mask, and almost the back end of that mask sort of frames the ear, the pale ear, which is such an important field mark in a lot of plumages for a Blackburnian warbler. Whereas this yellow-throated clearly doesn't have it. It will be nice to see the rest of the bird. It's nice that you can see those two field marks, but if you were able to see like the tail, the tail's quite different. Yellow-throated warbler has a quite short tail compared to Blackburnian. And if you could see the back, that would be even better, because Blackburnian warbler, of course, has that, the classic, braces, the white stripes on the back of the body, and yellow-throated is just plain gray all over. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
And notice the extent of the black on the lores, and how much pinched. So the supraloral, that's the white in front of the eye and above the bill. Yep. And notice how it's constricted in the yellow-throated, and it's wider in the Blackburnian above. And all of those things put together, gives it a different, a really different look. Also, note the shape of the streaks themselves. Whereas the yellow-throated are kind of blobby, and the Blackburnian are just like pencil streaks. And
There tends to be
again,
less yellow too, less color on a yellow-throated warbler too, and it is like legitimately kind of mostly around the throat, whereas in a Blackburnian, maybe you see this bird a little bit more. It does kind of stretch into the breast a little bit more. So there's more color on a Blackburnian than there is on these yellow-throateds.
but yeah,
People are
this
saying
is
they would have missed that in the field. I'm not sure. That's easy. It's one of those birds that's easy to miss on a one singular photo that's only showing you a couple different field marks.
exactly.
Whereas in the field, one would hope that you're able to observe this bird over a longer period of time, and it would, the things that make it a Blackburnian warbler would stand out. That's why identifying birds from photos is a little bit different than identifying birds in the field, because
Well, and
you're
also
beholden to
note
this one snapshot. This one
and well, the snapshot gives us another clue, and that's habit. And now again, warblers can be anywhere doing anything, especially during migration,
especially this time of year,
post breeding wandering. But yellow-throated warbler is almost approaching black and white in terms of being a branch creeper. It stays, it likes the bigger branches a lot of time, and it kind of moves along them and pokes underneath with that longer bill, and whereas Blackburnian is out in the outer thinnest branches, and it's fly catching and doing things like that, and it behaves differently and tends, sort of like downy and hairy woodpecker. It's like if you see a woodpecker, one of the two, and it's out in the little skinny outer branches, poking around at stuff, it's almost certainly a downy, because the hairies just they don't like to
act
do
like
that.
real woodpeckers.
They do. They act like real woodpeckers.
Downies act weird.
They do. They're like
Munisig, Michigan. You know where Munisig, Michigan is? I would expect Blackburnian to be quite a bit more common than yellow-throated, based on that.
Although yellow-throated is one of those,
could be out there.
Yellow-throated is one of those birds like blue grosbeak, and a couple of others that's really marching north fast. We've got them here all the way up to the Wisconsin border, no problem, in multiple locations. And they were quite rare in Wisconsin. Now there's a few places where you can find them. Michigan, I'm sure, is kind of the same. So the bird in question in back is a Blackburnian warbler.
Yeah,
and
Andrew
the bird in front
in the YouTube comments points out, regardless of season and plumage, Blackburnian always has that neat near geometric cheek patch. Correct? Yeah, as you can see on that one, a bit more muddled on the yellow-throated for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Ha. Go for it.
All right, so we've got a sparrowish bird, though it doesn't quite clock as a sparrow to me, but I point out it's got that large head, large, thick, deep, seed-crunching bill.
Yep.
Kind of not a lot going on here on the body, though I do see what appears to be yellow on the chest of that bird. I think that's pretty accurate, because even though the photo is a bit blown out, you can't see sort of the tan around it. But I think you'd be safe to head to the sparrows on this species, though. I think it's not going to be, well, the back of the field guide is what I mean by that.
Oh, okay.
Though it's not really, it doesn't look like, it's not like a sparrow, but it's the sparrowish bird. But that bill is huge. It's almost like a grosbeak bird.
It is, and it's got a nice long tail, and it looks out in Nebraska.
Looks like it's got an eyebrow.
Out in the prairie, it's got some, something, maybe a little bit of streaking on the side of the flanks. But really what stands out, Nate, as you said, is that bill. And
big old bill.
It's kind of grayish, if not even approaching a little bit silvery. And, if we go back to remembering that Savannah sparrow, and all of the sparrows on that on that screen
Yeah,
when we were
they
looking at
they
it.
have thick bills, but they're not big bills.
Not like this. Not like
Yeah,
this. Like you said, this is looking like like somewhere between a tanager and a cardinal, or a
yeah,
grosbeak, or something in
mm-hmm.
that flavor. But out in the
Sure.
plains, um, uh, let's take a look. Let's identify this bird and take a look. It's a dick sissel.
Tick, tick, sizzle.
One of my favorite
Yeah,
birds,
love
because
those
what a
birds.
success, what a conservation success story
Oh, for
um,
sure.
that bird is. When I was a kid,
Fun breeding bird
that
too.
was so hard to
Dramatic.
find. There were only one or two places around the Chicago area where you could find them, and it was very hard. And now they're all over the place, and they
Yep.
have it's partially, I believe, a conservation success story, because places with prairie, states like Illinois and Wisconsin and Indiana and so on, have really put a lot of effort into conserving prairie. But dick
Hmm.
thistles also have adapted to breeding in the grass strips between ag fields,
That's exactly right. Yep,
and
that's where we see them where I live.
they have
Is
exploded.
hay fields, and I in my county there is a organic farm up in the northeast corner, and has dick sissels that are exactly as you say, Greg, in those overgrown strips between the crops.
Yep.
Where you get like maybe 15 feet wide of dense brushy whatnot, and the dick
Yeah.
sissels will be teed
And
up
if you
there
get one
singing
of
their
those
song.
strips, I mean, if you glass it or scope it and look down the strip, you're like, okay.
Yeah,
And there's a
yeah,
fence.
a lot of
Sometimes there's a
times.
fence. It's like every 50 yards, there's another dick
Tick,
sissel
tick,
sitting on it,
tick, tick.
singing
Yep.
at each other.
Hmm.
But let's run down why this is a dick sissel and not some of the other birds it might be. Um, so, yeah, Eastern meadowlark. Yes, it's out there. They can be ratty like that, but the bill shape, boy,
Built
it'd be
all
hard.
wrong, short. They've got a very short tail, very
And a very
distinctive
short tail. We can see this
birds.
bird's got a
Long,
nice long
strong
tail.
legs. Yeah, the eastern meadowlark
Bobolink,
looks very different, though the
very
pattern
different,
on the front is similar.
very similar, and yeah. So we can discount Eastern meadowlark. Bobolink,
Throw it out.
um, it's got a big thick bill,
Bobolink
but not as
has.
big. But it's got more pattern on the head.
Hmm.
It generally has less pattern underneath, although dick sissel this time of year can be, as we see, almost completely plain underneath,
Hmm.
without any hint of color, although usually they show some yellow and some streaking on the sides. But again, look at that bill. That bill is just so big, and like, again, like tanager like almost. One other thing
The
is the
shape of the bird
tail.
is pretty different too, because
It
Dick
is.
Sissel is shaped more like a cardinalet. It's got a big thick body and a longer tail, whereas Bobolink is shaped like in the icterid that it is. It's got a
Yeah,
longer body, a smaller head, shorter tail, and I almost never see one Bobolink. Usually when
true.
they're around, there's a bunch of them too.
And lastly, bobolink has pointed tail feathers like a woodpecker, and
Mm,
we can clearly
yeah,
see this bird's tail and know that it's not a
big long legs
bobolink.
too.
Um, and the bird that Dick Sissel in winter is most commonly confused with is house sparrow, and
And
they
most
can be
commonly hangs out with.
and that they hang out with them at feeders when they stray,
Yeah. Yep.
um, and they can be
Winter Dick Sissels are
maddeningly
almost
similar.
always with house sparrows. Yep.
And it's
The
funny
shape is
because
quite similar.
the shape is similar, the size is similar, the coloring is
Hmm.
similar. One of the ways to tell, like when you're looking at a pile of house sparrows at a feeder, no matter what plumage they're in, they always have this sort of brownish back with these bright straw-colored stripes
Hmm.
down the back. And you can
Hmm.
quickly look over all those birds, and anything that's got those two or four big stripes, the straw-colored stripes down the back, you just not pay
Filter
attention
them
to it.
out. Yep.
Except for Dick Sissel, which has the same stripes on the back as a house sparrow. It
Usually
does.
yeah, and sometimes they can be very hard to see, especially when those flocks are quite dense, and you're just like waiting for that little tinge of yellow, that yellow wash when the bird turns its head, and you can pick it out. Yeah, I mean, dick thistles and winter house sparrows. Winter dick thistles and house sparrows are quite a common combination.
But again, that bill, I mean, and
Mm,
house sparrows can have some pretty hefty bills, but
not that
not
big.
approaching, not really as a dick thistle, not as
Mm,
big and as thick as a dick thistle, and we can see it in this picture, that sort of silvery gray color on the lower mandible.
mhm.
They usually show that as well. So yeah, we got a
Dick
dick
thistles have
thistle
that
here.
really distinctive flight call too. That kind of loud, kind of
Yeah.
electric, zappy call. If you key on that, you might find some fall dick thistles because they'll fly over and give you that zap call, and then yeah, dick thistle.
Yeah, we would on our mentioning the big days again. We would get those. We would get those at like midnight. We'd get out of the car, and one of the first
Oh
birds
yeah,
we get is a dick thistle going overhead.
yeah.
So that is it for our birds. So if you guys
We
got
did it. We
anything
did
that
it.
we did it again.
Did it.
Um, if you've guys got anything you want to say, any questions, we've got a few minutes left here. We would love to chat with you. Um, and while we're doing
We'll
that,
do
I
the
just want to
reminder thing.
remind everybody that's an ABA member to jump over to ABA Community, which is our member directory and social media platform, where you can interact with other ABA members and ask questions and show us the birds you've seen and all kinds of fun things. And yeah. Oh, Gavin's telling us he's got to run. See you later, Gavin.
Adios, Kevin. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. If you want to help support this program, please consider, I always get the wrong one. Please consider
I got it.
joining the
I got
American
it here.
Birding Association. You get access to a lot of great a lot of points, a lot of great things, the OM system, discounts to OM system, Zeiss, friends like that. We're happy to point people to those directions. We're always happy to work with people in the birding community. We'll be back in a couple weeks in September.
Yeah.
Enjoy your long weekend, I hope.
Do we
If
have a
you
long
get one
weekend?
next week, Labor Day weekend next week
Oh, wow.
already.
Look
Already.
at all the things that are happening while you're working and not paying attention.
Susan Nelson says, "Is a worm-eating warbler possible in West Tennessee?" West Tennessee.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, certainly quite very common in East Tennessee,
Yeah.
in the Appalachians. But this time of year, yeah, they're kind of an early-ish migrant. I would expect them
Well, I
to
mean
show up.
they're
There's probably around.
and they're found in southern and western Illinois, and those birds
It's a southern
migrating
breeding
south
warbler.
along the
Yeah,
Mississippi, the bluffs along the Mississippi. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
absolutely. Look out for worm-eating warblers. Um, yeah. So we're coming up on two. Oh, we don't have any questions. Sarah says, "Thanks so much. First time to make it. Glad to get to Montrose Point. Recommendation. Very good. Love that. Gets to go to Switzerland next month. Enjoy Switzerland. Don't know about the birds there. Get up in the mountains. You can get like alpine snowfinch and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Choughs are up there. I understand it. I don't know much about birding in Europe.
I have to say I've never
Uh,
been.
yeah, I've been birding in Scotland like many years ago, and you get to see the seabird colonies up there. That's quite cool. Anyway, we will see you all in a couple weeks, and as always, you can find us various places. If you like to hear me talk about birds, you can go to American Birding Podcast. It's a free
Yep,
podcast, weekly podcast. Good stuff coming up.
the
And
best natural history podcast out there, I will say.
aside from all the Bigfoot ones, so we will we'll see you next time. Thanks everybody, and
Yeah,
adios.
take it easy.